As a preteen boy growing up in the late 70s, there were few things more disappointing than tuning into an episode of the Hardy Boys Nancy Drew Mysteries and finding out it was actually a Nancy Drew story that week. It ranked right up there with the Vancouver Canucks playing on Hockey Night in Canada instead of the Leafs or the Canadiens. The Hardy Boys Nancy Drew Mysteries was a two short-lived series that ran on ABC TV from January 30th, 1977 to January 14th, 1979. So it ran for 3 seasons, only one of which was a full season. It starred Parker Stevenson and Sean Cassidy as the Hardy Boys. Oh, and Pamela Sue Martin as Nancy Drew, but who really cared, right? The urban legend that surrounds the cancellation of the show is that it was destroyed in the ratings because it was put up against the behemoth 60 Minutes, and that ABC decided to cancel the show to pursue higher ratings. They would later regret that decision as the replacements continued to fail. As a young boy, I was obsessed with the Hardy Boy books. A few of those I had taken from the library, but I owned almost all 58 and had read most of them twice. It was your stereotypical 70s road trip, our entire family, mom, dad, 3 kids, all piled into dad's company car, a Ford LTD, driving west, staying with friends and families on the way. There wasn't as much disposable income back then, and we certainly could not afford an airplane vacation. Then one magical gas station stop, my mom had gone in to pick up snacks while my dad paid for the gas. Yeah, all 3 kids, ages 5, 8, 10, stayed in the car unattended. Anyway, my mom emerged from the store with not only snacks, but also with a copy of this blue book called Danger on Vampire Trail. It was actually the 50th book in the Hardy Boys series. My mom was always really cool about that stuff, buying us Kiss records, letting us watch horror movies, so I kind of wondered if this was the only one they had, or if she was attracted to the vampire name, being a big Stephen King fan herself. She read the book aloud to us as we traveled, and I was hooked from that day forward to this pair of brotherly sleuths and their pals from Bayport. The TV show was a family-friendly mystery program produced by Universal Television for ABC. The series began by alternating between episodes featuring the Hardy Boys and those with Nancy Drew. The first season was a mid-season replacement starting in January and ran 14 episodes, 7 Hardy Boys, 7 Nancy Drew, and they had exactly alternated weeks. In week 11, the Hardy Boys traveled to Hawaii, where they got mixed up in a case, while in week 12, Nancy Drew and friends got involved in a mystery on an ocean cruise. This kind of travel treatment was a staple of shows in the late 70s. Take the characters on exotic vacations instead of road trips in the family station wagon. While season 1 began in January, so it ran only 14 episodes, ending in May 1977, season 2 began at the start of the season, so it ran a full 22 episodes. The focus began to shift to the more popular Hardy Boys. 11 episodes were centered around the boys, while only 3 were exclusively Nancy Drew, and 8 episodes were crossovers. Of course, crossovers were another typical vehicle of the late 70s and into the 80s, but usually it was crossovers between different shows, not characters within the same show. During the second season, the role of Nancy Drew was recast from Pamela Sue Martin to Janet Louise Johnson. In the first episode of season 2, the Hardy Boys and Nancy Drew meet in a European hotel room and are at first at odds. Frank and Joe are tracking their missing father, who was working with Nancy at the time. The series then featured episodes which see the two teams work successfully together. Nancy and Frank are also constantly at odds with each other. For season 3, the show got rid of the girls altogether and was retitled The Hardy Boys. All 10 episodes were Hardy Boys stories, and there were no appearances by Nancy Drew. But don't worry, 2 of the major storyline vehicles continued. There was an unofficial crossover with The Avengers, the British spy show starring Patrick Macnee, not the comic book characters. And besides traveling to England for that episode, this season had the boys traveling to Greece, the south of France, the Caribbean, Puerto Rico, Atlantic City, and to Hawaii to do battle with the KGB while trying to help a Russian defector. Is there possibly a more 80s storyline than that? Okay, it was 1978, but still. Joe Hardy was engaged in the first episode of season 3, but his fiancée was killed in a hit-and-run investigated by the FBI. After solving the case, Frank and Joe became government agents at the Justice Department. Their boss, Harry Hammond, became a regular cast member. Sean Cassidy was the first one cast in the role of Joe Hardy. Producer Arlene Sedaris stated that they were looking for a young David Cassidy, who was Sean's half-brother. Sedaris stated that casting Nancy Drew was harder as everyone had a fixed image in their heads of what she was like. Cassidy was originally cast as older brother Frank, and Leif Garrett was cast as Joe. For whatever reason, Garrett did not make the cut, and Parker Stevenson got the nod to be Frank, and Cassidy was bumped down to the role of Joe. Parker was definitely more mature. A pairing of Cassidy and Garrett, however, would have been the two biggest heartthrobs together. However, even with Cassidy's status as the king of Teen Beat magazine and crossover into singing, it was not good enough to bump the ratings. Actress Jamie Lee Curtis actually had auditioned for the role of Nancy Drew. She later guest starred in a Nancy Drew episode, The Mystery of the Fallen Angels. The show also cut, changed, or downplayed almost all of the support characters from the books, including the Hardy Boys' friends or chums. Onto the ratings. So the series replaced the short-lived Cause, which finished 91st in primetime ratings, so very low, and had aired Sunday nights at 7 p.m. before Top 10 hits The $6 Million Man, which had finished 5th overall, and the ABC Sunday Night Movie, which was tied for 6th overall. So you can see that in a world where lead-ins mattered, how that could have been a problem for the lowly Cause. And yes, Cause was a sketch comedy show featuring Bill Cosby, so don't look for a reboot of that anytime soon. The series ran against 60 Minutes on CBS, which was in a three-way tie for 15th, and The Wonderful World of Disney on NBC, which was 53rd overall, which is surprisingly low. In Series 1, the Hardy Boys' Nancy Drew Mysteries did not achieve the top 10 success of the night's other series, The $6 Million Man and the Sunday Night Movie. They finished tied for 58th spot overall, so higher than Cause, but lower than even The Wonderful World of Disney. Season 2, in 1977-78, saw the show in the same lineup spot with the same competition and part of the same ABC Sunday Night Killer lineup. For reasons I've not been able to figure out, though, $6 Million Man plummeted from the number 5 show all the way down to the number 39 show. It was actually canceled and replaced by How the West Was Won, which premiered in the second half of the year and finished 9th overall. Like the $6 Million Man, ABC Sunday Night Movie dropped down as well to number 22 and had been tied for 6th the year before. In a television world where you could only watch one TV show at a time, viewers on Sunday night were leaving ABC for CBS, where 60 Minutes opposite the Hardy Boys' Nancy Drew rose to 6th spot. And other Sunday night shows, All in the Family finished 5th, and Ellis finished 8th. ABC still had the top 4 TV shows on network television, but they were on different nights. They were on Sundays. Laverne and Shirley, Happy Days, Three's Company, and Charlie's Angels. The landscape was beginning to change from ABC dominance to CBS challenging them. Following the departure of Pamela Sue Martin and the subsequent mixed reactions with replacement Janet Louise Johnson, producers once again rebooted the series. This time they cut the Nancy Drew character, and the series for season 3 was now titled The Hardy Boys, focused solely on the Hardys. The series became darker and featured the Hardys as professional investigation agents at the Justice Department. This season, the show aired before Battlestar Galactica, another new Glenn A. Larson series, the man behind the Hardy Boys. The Hardy Boys dropped to number 91 in the ratings. Ironically, the same ranking as the show it had replaced 3 years previous, Cause. Battlestar Galactica finished at number 33, but was still canceled after just one season. The ABC Sunday Night Movie rebounded and finished the year at number 16 in the ratings. Across the channel from the Hardys, 60 Minutes hung tough, number 8 spot, and Wonderful World of Disney finished 55th. According to Wikipedia, in January 1979, the series was abruptly canceled. According to the cast and crew members, this was due to ABC attempting to garner better ratings in that same period. This ultimately failed, and after ratings declined significantly, it took years for the network to recover. Larson later stated that the network had cancellation remorse, while Stevenson said that years later an ABC executive at the time said his biggest mistake was canceling the Hardy Boys. So that's what Wikipedia had to say, but boy, this seems disingenuous to say the least. Most shows in that low band of ratings are canceled right away, never mind after 3 seasons. The household ratings of the show went down every year, from 17.2 to 15.8 to 13. ABC now had expanded from having the top 4 ranked shows on TV to having the top 6 and having 9 of the top 12. Considering the juggernaut that they were in the ratings, I think they were more than fair with the series. So to say that it took the network years to recover doesn't make sense, but I guess they could mean in that time slot. Since the Hardy Boys was cancelled mid-season, it was replaced with the Osmond Family Hour and then Friends. Yes, Friends. No, not those Friends. The problem seemed to be that they were competing for the same family audience that NBC was going after with Disney. CBS had 60 Minutes for all the grumpy old people who either didn't have kids or told them to go outside and play instead. Due to government broadcast rules, the Sunday 7 p.m. slot was set aside. It was used for educational or family content quota, so the choices of replacement were limited. The next season, 1979-80, in the old Hardy Boys slot, so this is after it was cancelled, they put in Out of the Blue, a fantasy sitcom which had a crossover at one point with Mork and Mindy. It fared poorly and was cancelled after only 7 episodes. That was only a half hour, so this was a change in strategy by ABC, perhaps spurred on by the massive amount of half-hour comedies it had at the top of the broadcast world. And so it was followed by A New Kind of Family, another sitcom, whose cast included a young Rob Lowe. It was cancelled in October at the same time as its lead-in Out of the Blue. The sitcoms were followed up by a science fiction show, Galactica 1980, which was a spin-off of Battlestar Galactica. You remember that one. It lasted only 1 season, so of course it got a spin-off. It lasted 10 episodes. 60 Minutes in that time slot now catapulted all the way to number 1 in the ratings. The shifting landscape really hit ABC hard, as many of its sitcoms fell in the show rankings. They still had the number 2 show, Three's Company, and the number 3 show, That's Incredible. CBS, besides having 60 Minutes at number 1, had the number 4 to 11th ranked shows, including Ellis, Jefferson's, and One Day at a Time, which all ran on Sunday nights. This was the year, 79-80, that CBS took over from ABC as the number 1 network on television. The Hardy Boys time slot in 1981-82 went to a show called Those Amazing Animals, which was a spin-off from That's Incredible. Not only did the animals flop, but That's Incredible dropped from being the number 3 show to number 22. 60 Minutes dropped from the number 1 show to number 3, but it was surpassed by only 2 other CBS shows, Dallas and Dukes of Hazzard. MASH was 4th overall, which was also a CBS show. Ripley's Believe It or Not would take over the Hardy Boys time slot and bring some stability there, running from 1982 to 1986. On September 20th, 1977, on another ABC show, Happy Days, a leather-clad Fonzie jumped over a shark while on water skis. Years later, this show would be used to coin the term jumping the shark, which was used to indicate that a creative work or outlet appears to be making a stunt in a seemingly exhaustive attempt to generate elevated attention or publicity to something that was once perceived as popular but is no longer. A year later, in October 1978, while Frank Hardy didn't jump a shark, he did get tricked into surfing in shark-infested waters and almost paid the price. I don't think the Hardy Boys ever really jumped a shark. It just never took off. It's hard to pinpoint exactly why. I mean, in the 3-channel universe, the time slot was reserved for family educational shows, and while 60 Minutes would become more dominant, it was not a ratings juggernaut to start. There was also no NFL football, as it was on Mondays, and besides, it was not the dominant ratings player it has become. I guess it was splitting the ratings with Wonderful World of Disney, and even then came out on the short end of the stick. I'm not sure why anyone would say that it was a mistake to cancel the show. The ratings were bad, and probably was lucky to have lasted 3 seasons. Instead of getting better, the whole network, ABC, was starting a downward trend and losing ground to CBS. Its other Sunday night programs would also take a beating in the ratings. I think some people also believe that if they hung on, they could have capitalized on Sean Cassidy's popularity. However, much like ABC, Sean was already at the height of his popularity during the time of the show. By 1979, when Cassidy released his 4th album, it failed to crack the Billboard 200. Times and fashions were changing, including the decline of AM radio. The fall of Sean Cassidy, AM radio, Hardy Boys, and even ABC were all signs of a change from the late 70s to the start of the 80s. The Hardy Boys and Nancy Drew have existed in various forms of books, movies, and TV shows from 1927 until now with the Canadian Hulu show. So they've been going strong now for 95 years. Oh, and the Canadian connection doesn't end with the Hulu show, or rather, it doesn't begin there. Remember me comparing the disappointment of getting a Nancy Drew episode to a Hockey Night in Canada game without the Leafs or Canadians? Well, the very first ghostwriter used for the Hardy Boy books was Leslie McFarlane, who wrote almost 20 of the original books. And Leslie's son Brian became a central commentator on Hockey Night in Canada, a legendary commentator, and has written over 100 books, including hockey, both fiction and non-fiction, as well as other Canadiana books, many of which I have actually read. So if anyone else out there can think of a reason why ABC would have regretted their decision to cancel this fun and campy show, please let me know in the comments. But for my money, I just can't understand why anybody would think that that was a mistake to cancel this show. Thanks for listening.
I want to thank you and your two boys.
Well, let us know the next time the Navy intelligence needs help with a case, and I'll see if the boys are available.
My hero.
Hey, when am I? Chopped liver over here?